Hey, it's the Clockwork Mage, and this broadcast spell is live. Nice to be back for another episode of Ramblings of a Dungeon Master. So today we are going to be talking about what you need to be a Dungeon Master. Just starting out, what do you need to do that? Well, the short answer is you don't need a single thing. Okay, and now for the rest of the answer, you're still not going to need all that much. You really don't need much to be a dungeon master. All you need is your imagination, and some people say you need random chance as well, but even I have found ways around not needing dice. I actually have a homebrew dungeon that I made that requires no dice rolls, not a single one. And you can go all the way through the dungeon, making decisions and choices as you go through it, and you don't need dice at all. I did it to introduce new players to the world of D&D without making anything complicated with any of the numbers or anything like that. It was made to be streamlined, and it has a lot of fun twists and turns in it, and maybe someday I'll show you guys the dungeon. But for now, that's not what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about what a dungeon master should be thinking about bringing to the table. When you are a dungeon master, the main thing you will need is your imagination. You're going to need improv. I touched on this a lot in my first episode, and improv is extremely needed. You don't necessarily need to be quick on your feet, but you do need to be able to come up with how things are going to work in the world. Because it's always okay to ask your players for a moment of your time, especially if you're a new dungeon master. Just say, hey, can I take a second here to really think what's going to happen next? Let's take a 5-minute break. Maybe I'll grab a snack. Or if you don't want them to know that you're lost, you can just go with, yeah, I'm going to use the restroom real quick. Just give me a second here. Something like that. You can think of something to step away from the table. But if you want the more physical answer, dice is typically the very first thing you're going to need to be a dungeon master. You don't need anything else. You don't need a grid. You don't need figures. You don't need any of that stuff. If you want dice, there's a million free apps online that will give you dice. You don't need to pay a single cent for dice. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I love D&D. You can play it without buying a single thing. Now, obviously, I don't live by that philosophy. I have a lot of books, even right here, that are behind this one that you guys can see, but that's kind of the double-edged sword here. You are going to find yourself buying items and stuff because you'll fall in love with D&D. Hopefully you'll fall in love with it, as I have. Now, hopefully that doesn't fall. But anyways, that's half the fun, and that's what I really, really enjoy doing. I enjoy just sitting around a table with my friends, playing Dungeons and Dragons our way. At first, I introduced them with grids and figures and everything like that. I have all of that, and I use that as well. And it's really good to have for new players, especially if you're trying to make a group from scratch and everyone's new to each other or anything like that. It gives them something physical to hold on to. And that's something that can be way more resourceful than you could ever imagine. But even if that's the case, get a stack of grid paper, which is really, really cheap. I think it's maybe a couple bucks right now for a stack of 100 or 50 or something like that. I haven't used grid paper in a long time, so you'll have to excuse me. But you could do that and then just have a pencil and then write just a mark or something where everyone's standing on it. You can be a great dungeon master without needing any of the expensive toys. Everyone's going to tell you, oh, I love this new figure, or oh, having this book has been really helpful. You can find the books online for free, PDFs. I can't give them to you. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get in trouble with it. But I promise you, if you look them up, there are a lot of places where you can find them. As I was saying, you don't need the physical figures. You can just write a piece of paper. You can write on the paper. You can use a penny. I used to use extra dice that were laying around as people that my team was fighting, or my players were fighting. It's whatever you can pull together to create that theater of mind that you're going for. It's kind of everything that you want to do with it, and D&D is what you make it. That's the main reason, again, I fell in love with it. It's what you make of D&D. And you don't have to stick to the books. While they are great guidelines, I will always suggest going off and making your own thing, or being creative with your players, or even ignoring some of the weapons. While you can use it as, again, a guide, just come up with the ideas by yourself. Test through trial and error. Now, as my players have gotten used to me, and I've been DMing the same group for about 3+ years now. This particular group, I have been DMing overall for 12 years. We actually haven't pulled out the grid in probably a year in real life. And we do D&D every other weekend, about. So we haven't needed the grid anymore. It's mostly theater of mind, and anything that I can't explain, I literally grab like a salt shaker and a book that's laying around and set things up really quick. That way they can see it. And then everything from there is still theater of mind. We basically only use the dice, like a d20 and one other die, whatever weapon die my players are using. Of course, the mage has to use more dice, but again, my point is you don't need much. As long as you and your players are having a good time, I think that's all that matters in the end. Just make sure that you're all on the same page, and to start being a DM is just to ask. Ask for some players. Ask people if they'd like to play a campaign with you. It doesn't have to be much. You could use a module. Again, I've seen some of those for free online as well. And I highly suggest starting with a module. But it's not needed. It's really not. It could be anything as wacky as I've seen a DM come up with their very first module. It was kind of weird. They took from the module, but they rearranged it so much and they changed so much of it. It was basically their own. They just kind of kept the same story beats, and that was really cool for them. They were very creative people, to be fair. Honestly, even being a DM, you don't need to be that creative either. It's kind of just being what will make everyone happy. I hope I'm explaining this properly. If, again, you have any questions or comments, I'd love to answer them down below. But I really do hope I'm getting my point across. Anyone can be a dungeon master. Don't feel like you have to live up to all of the great dungeon masters you see online, or even the same dungeon master at your table. You need to have a starting point somewhere. Everyone needs to have a starting point. I was nowhere near a good dungeon master, and I'm still not a good dungeon master. I'm not as good as some of the people online. I would love to be as amazing as some of the people that are full-time, get paid to do games and run campaigns. I would love to be as good as that, but I don't have that type of time on my hands. I know most people don't. But that shouldn't stop you from enjoying your time with your friends and just having a reason to come up with something funny. And you don't have to stick to any of the same modules that D&D has. You can totally go off the rails and even come up with your own scenarios and your own settings and worlds. I know I created a setting once where I literally took a map of my local city and I ran a zombie apocalypse campaign. It was super simple. Everyone's weapons were very simple, and I had people roll their stats still, because some people can get a little touchy with making their stats real. But some of the players that wanted to do it took their real stats as they were, and we played like that. And it was a great time. I literally used the map of my local city, and we ran a campaign in a zombie apocalypse there until they made it to safety. And it was a lot of fun. It was a short campaign, and I didn't expect too much to come of it, but it's a place that anyone could start with, right? It doesn't need to be medieval, while most of it will be. Again, it's that fantasy aspect that people love, but it doesn't have to be. Now, for any other things that you may need as a dungeon master to get started, I mean, as long as you just have one other person, maybe a pen and pencil and a piece of paper, that's everything you could ever need to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's the starting point for DMs. You don't need to start with all of this stuff. This is years of accumulation, and this is not needed in any way, shape, or form. I have a great time without it. I honestly can't remember the last time I pulled out any of my books either. It's probably been 3 months since I even pulled out a book during a session lately. It's just kind of how the worlds go now, and how we all know the rules, and I hope that other people feel like they can do it too. If you were ever doubting yourself, I hope this is the video that pushes you to be the dungeon master, to be the person that people listen to and make worlds and wonders for everyone to enjoy. I hope you listen to your players, and I hope that you continue forward with whatever journey you're on in your D&D life. It's probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life is playing Dungeons and Dragons. I've gotten really close to all my friends this way. I've really understood my friends on a deeper level because of Dungeons and Dragons. And honestly, I suggest it to everyone. I always suggest it to everyone. It's something that I think is an experience in itself. While it may not be the experience for everyone, I understand that. Even then, I'd say try again. But I'm a little biased, of course. I just hope you find some enjoyment out of it as I have, and you find a way to be happy with Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, and quickly, while I'm wrapping up this video, I will state some of the perks of being a dungeon master. Some of the perks are, if you love making characters, now you get to make 10 characters every session. If you like having creative builds and other things like that, you can now put that into the NPCs that you're making. If you have a very creative outlet if you have a very creative mind and need an outlet, then you can use being a dungeon master as that outlet. There's so much amazing, wonderful things that you can do, including bringing your friends together, which I hadn't realized how important that could be, because as I'm getting older, and I won't say my age right now, but as I'm getting older, I'm realizing it's harder and harder to stay in touch with some of my friends that I've, had throughout the years. But Dungeons and Dragons has made it a lot easier to see them regularly or semi-regularly. And honestly, that's probably the biggest gift that Dungeons and Dragons has ever given to me. And I'm happy that I decided to be a dungeon master. Now, if you have any thoughts or comments, please don't forget to leave them below. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see all of you guys later.